If this was your first water-cooled loop and it's time to start cleaning it to get all that gunk out of there, well, this is the video you've been looking for. So welcome to the channel. For those of you who are returning subscribers, thank you very much for coming back. If you're new to the channel, I really hope we gain a subscriber today. All you gotta do is hit that big red button down below. Well, some of you may have noticed during the intro, I was holding up Crest 3D White and a toothbrush. And you're probably thinking, why is this guy holding up toothpaste and a toothbrush? Well, 3D White is very good because it has little like abrasive particles in it. And those are very good for actually cleaning out like your block, the fin stack inside your block, and the same for maybe your GPU block. The toothbrush is a good way to get in between the fins also to actually clean them out. It's just a real good tool to use. It's small, it's gonna get in those small areas, hard to reach areas. Now, I do not have a GPU block here, but this method still works on the GPU block, no difference. You're still gonna wanna apply the 3D White, you're still gonna wanna use a toothbrush on that. Also, you're gonna need a few other things. Some isopropyl alcohol. I like putting it in a spray bottle because it gives me more control of where it actually goes. Now, the great thing about your computer is this is not gonna hurt any of the components. Alcohol dries very fast. So if you get any liquid on your computer, as long as it's turned off, you could spray some alcohol on it once you damp it with a rag, and the alcohol would help it dry up faster, and it'll help with any leftover residue from the water. A jug of distilled water. Whoa, there it goes. Yeah, this one has a leak, so I had to lay it on its side. But a jug of distilled water, it's only $1. Get yourself 2-3 of them. And some type of bowl, some type of Tupperware, something that you could put the parts in. And that's pretty much all you're gonna need besides the parts you're gonna be cleaning, of course. So at this point, what you wanna do is look at the components really well that you're trying to clean today. Do they need to be opened up? Do you really need to get inside and open the CPU block up, and get in there and clean it? Can you do this without taking it apart? If you're using, again, these types of liquids like the Corsair XR5, whatever it's called, the more liquidies, you're probably not gonna need to actually open up your block, get in there and really scrub. So more than likely what you gotta do is just flush your loop. Just take the fluid out, open up the top, get a funnel, and circulate some distilled water until you get all the coloring out, and then add more liquid. And that's it. Well, add your fluid after that, but just running distilled water through your loop with this type of liquid definitely will clean it. It'll do for pastels too. So once you actually drain your loop and you actually run some distilled water through it, if you're using pastels, well, you'll be able to see through, into your CPU block and into your GPU block, and you can really look at your fin stack and everything really well at that point because you got all that pastel color out. So you'll see there like, oh yeah, I need to open it up. You'll be able to tell. It'll be discolored here and there. It just won't look right. Then yes, you're gonna wanna take it apart. Okay, so let's get started. We are gonna start with our CPU block. Actually opening it up, taking it apart, and cleaning it out. So I'm gonna bring you guys closer and we're gonna see how to do that. This is the block I'll be taking apart today. Now, yes, every block is a little bit different, but all in all, when you take them apart, you're pretty much gonna find pretty much the same components in almost every block. Not every block, but almost every block. And they're not really that hard to take apart. But if you have a piece of paper or something next to you, take yourself a marker, draw the block out the best you can, and place the screws accordingly to the picture, or just number them. Take pictures before and after you take screws out. This way you don't forget. So this is the Corsair hydrox XC7 RGB. Doesn't matter, white or black. So what you're gonna wanna do, turn it around and take a peek at what is holding this block together. So if you look real well, you have screws going completely around the cold plate. You have screws holding the cold plate to this bezel right here, and also probably something for the RGB, like the LED strip. So let's start by taking out the ones holding the housing to the cold plate. So we hopefully get rid of this wire and get that out of the way, because that's really not a big deal. We want to get it inside of the cold plate. If you have an iFixit kit, like I always recommend, this is gonna have every tool you need to take everything apart. And pay attention too to the size of the screws and if they have a tip or if they're flat, because if they're all identical, then it doesn't matter. Mine was already missing a screw right here, and I have never opened this before. This is my first time opening it, and I bought this brand new. It was not open box, it was brand new from Micro Center. Well, it's not gonna hurt with cooling or anything. This just holds the cold plate to the housing, so no big deal. And let's see what that did for us. Yep, that removed the cold plate from the housing. This is your RGB LED right here. It's 2 screws here, 1 screw at the top. That way you can remove this ring and you could replace it, or just take the ring off. You won't have this wire, but you also won't have the LED. So if you don't like RGB and you don't want this extra wire, then take this off and you don't gotta worry about extra wire management or, LEDs. So with this done, take this, put it to the side. So let's start removing these screws, going completely around the cold plate. And that's all the screws removed, and that was a lot of screws. So let's see what happens now. There we go. Oh yeah, this actually did have a lot of foreign bodies in there. Yeah, that's not great, but I don't think it's really gonna over affect anything. Those are very small things. But still, let's get it cleaned out, because that's why we are here. Also, you'll notice there's a gasket right here. Be very careful. You do not want to damage this gasket if you're going to be removing it. If you have those pastel colors, you definitely want to remove this, because the coloring could get underneath this gasket and leave like little residue. So be very careful when removing the gasket. You're gonna have to dig in there pretty good to get it out. So please be careful. You do this at your own risk. Then inside of this right here, you see this piece right here, this actually comes out also. And besides taking out these 3 screws, that is all the components of your CPU block. You're gonna have to clean all of these, except for this, really and truly. This just needs a little wipe down. But the rest of these are gonna be cleaned with distilled water. Let's move on to the next phase. So I'll be using this right here. I washed it out really good because I don't want any other particles in here either. So you want to wash it really, really well. If you're going to use soap, which I do recommend, just make sure you clean it out really well with hot water. Don't use regular paper towels because they have lint in them. So you don't want lint to get inside of the block, inside of your cold plate or anything. So have like blue shop towels are excellent. Rag, a cloth, something that won't leave any type of debris, and wipe it out really well. And also, you're gonna want to use something like this or those blue shop towels to wipe down your components. So just cover up the components. Something like that's fine. Also, make sure the toothbrush you're using is clean. If it is an older brush, well, just clean it real well. That's all. Just run it under some hot water with some soap. That way you kill any type of like bacteria or anything like that, because you don't want life in the loop. I know that there's already anti-growth inhibitors and things like that, but still, make sure you don't add to the fat. Just keep it clean. That's all. I already see some particles came off of here. It's in the water. So let's start with our cold plate. That's what this is called. It's called a cold plate. Yeah, they're that thin. A razor blade could fit in between there, barely. So just, clean it out. So you want to do this before the toothpaste. Get this, as clean as possible. You could go opposite way too. It's not gonna hurt none. You're not gonna bend the fin stack with these bristles. Move on to a different part. Be careful with this because this is flexible. So just be good with it. Be good with it. be kind to it. But what you're also doing, even with clean parts like this, is you're taking all the residue left over from the last liquid that was in here. Like that blue liquid that was originally in my system. Move on, get this stuff really well. So you want to get the threaded areas on the inside and this part right here really well, because that's where the liquid really is. So just get in there, get the little edges, don't leave anything out. And then this right here, you could just take your hand, put it in here, and just run your hand finger across it. You don't want to leave any residue on any component. Inside of the liquid here, you could see little black particles. I'm not sure if you could see them. And I see other light particles. But a lot of this black particle stuff, what that is from gaskets like this one, see right here? It's from gaskets like this one in the fittings. The fittings, especially brand new, as you put your tubing in, the tubing's gonna nick it, it's gonna, you know, scuff it up, and their particles are gonna come out of those rubber and go into your loop. Look how much is in mine right now. And this is our first water, mind you. We're gonna dump this out and do this one more time to rinse them. And let's start taking pieces out before we do the toothpaste. So you're gonna wanna get in there with a little rag or something, or those shop towels, and just start, you know, cleaning it off. Even though this isn't the end, we're gonna be doing this again. We wanna make sure that there's nothing left from this water on the stuff. You wanna get all the edges, everything. And you could use air again to blow out the water that may have got in the little screw holes. Don't overdo it with your gasket. Don't tear and pull and rip and do. Just, you know, dab it. You see these right here? Those like look a little like pop right off out of there. And this looks like it doesn't matter what direction it goes in, so don't really worry about that. Just make sure you put them back like that. They cannot go back like this, so don't worry about that. All right, I can get in there really good. That's cool that that comes off. Yeah, this is my first time taking this block apart. So we're all learning together. So let's just move on and start cleaning this with toothpaste. So this is the one I use, Crest 3D White Stain Eraser. Freshman doesn't really matter. That stain eraser means a lot. So this stuff is really cool. It works very well. Everybody I know recommends this. So I'm not the first to recommend this, but this stuff is really great. Get a little bit on there. Now, depending at where you have the most grime or whatever, that's where you're gonna wanna start working this in. Start working it in. Get it in there really well. You can use a lot of it, doesn't matter. The best part is it smells really good. So this stuff has those little whitening strips. They're like little crystals. They're abrasive. So they're really gonna get in there and do a great job of kind of like lightly sanding down the corrosion, you could say. So it's like a light sanding you're doing here. And you don't have to do this side. This side is fine. This is where the thermal paste goes. So don't worry about that. Let's put this back in here and let's give it a good little swashel. I want to say I wish it had some corrosion or something on it to show you how well it cleans, but I'm glad it doesn't, sorry. Look how clean it does leave it regardless. So do this a few times, not just once. You're gonna want to do it a few times. So put some more toothpaste and just, you know, be liberal with it. And this is how you would clean any of the components in your loop that has the corrosion. You may need to do this a few times, dumping it, adding it. What I like to do at this point is go to the sink with this, clean this, let it run under water, hot water, and with a clean toothbrush, go in there to make sure I don't leave any of the particles from the toothpaste in there. So I'm gonna go run this under hot water, clean this, scrub real well, take this water out, clean this thing really well, the bowl, add me a nice fresh mix of distilled water, and we'll be right back with fresh distilled water in here and this being cleaned underneath the sink. So make sure you rinse this off and dry it off really, really well before you add this back in here with clean distilled water. And also make sure that this is wiped down really, really well with a nice rag or a nice shop towel. Now, once you dried everything off, you can take a real good look and see how your cleaning went and see if you need to do a little bit more touch up. Now, using a t-shirt or something can also leave a little lint, but not as bad as napkins. So if you have a can of compressed air, you have one of those little balloon things or something, or just blow on it really hard and get all this stuff out of there the best you can. I do advise for you to get a can of compressed air though, because you do want to make sure there's no particles in that fin stack. Let's place this back in. We're putting all the stuff back in because remember, all this stuff was in the bad water, the first distilled water that had all that little black foreign debris and that other white debris you guys couldn't see. I don't think you could see it on the camera, but it was full. So let's make sure there's none of that on here. We may need to do this a few times. So get distilled water in here, swish everything around, use the toothbrush again, and dump that water. Do it again until we don't see any more debris in our water. Add some water. I think I see debris in here already still, but nothing that it was like before, so that's really cool. And at this point, I'm gonna take them out again, dry them off, blow them off, put it back in the water, and I'm gonna do this until I make sure that there's no more debris in this liquid, and then we're gonna put this back together. So do this a few times, and then come back, and we'll be putting this thing back together. And once everything's clean, it's dried off, make sure to blow it all out with some compressed air. Really make sure you do. You want to get in the nooks and crannies. I want to make sure everything's really dried out. So I'm gonna let this dry a little longer and I'll be right back after this stuff dries. Okay, so it's been a while now. Everything should have dried by now, but if it's not fully dried, it's not really a big deal. This is made for liquid, so not a big deal. But let's get this guy back together. And let's start with this thing. It can only go back on one way, and it's the same on every direction, in any direction, it's the same. So if you notice, these things right here are raised up on this side, like little table legs, and then on this thing, the same thing, right there. So you're gonna take this, so make sure it's going in that direction, right there, because these two legs will be connecting to those two legs once we actually put it back. Let's get this part right here, turn it around. You want to take your gasket and you want to place your gasket back the way it was. So there's a little pocket and this will literally go right back in that pocket. Just run your finger around it and make sure it gets back inside of that pocket. So just make sure it's nice and flush all the way around. Again, there's a slot, a pocket that this actually fits into. Now it's time to get this little package put in. So you want this piece right here. Now notice that this is a triangle and it has this really raised up little like barrier right here. If you notice on this, it has a slot right in the middle. So you want to make sure, because you see the triangle, and this is a triangle, that it's lined up. Also, it has these little pegs sticking up that those little legs will go in and snap in. So slide that on top of that and then push down and it is in. That's it. So it will be loose. It doesn't click in or anything, but just make sure you line up the triangle with the triangle and those little pegs with that standoff right there. Now your cold plate. Now pay attention. There's these little like cutouts around the cold plate. So make sure when you put it back that as long as the fin stack is running parallel with the inlet outlet, when you put it back over, make sure it's centered. Turn it a few times until it just, boom. It'll go right back in, fit right in there, and it won't be able to go anywhere. And when you turn it around, you'll see the fins are running parallel with the inlet and the outlet. Very important. Now, once that's back in, let's start putting our screws back. So we're gonna start with all of these. Don't tighten them either. Just get them threaded. Get them in there like right before it would actually touch the metal. Go to about there on them. They're not exactly flush all the way down. They're just screwed in about 90%. Now, once you have all the screws on the cold plate, you want to make sure it goes down with even amount of pressure because there is a gasket under there. So if you tighten this one all the way down and keep going around, there's a chance you could leave a little gap. So we're going to do, say, this one first. We're going to go till it stops, go about 5% more. Then we're going to jump up in the corner, go till it stops, about 5% more. We're going to come back up this way in the corner. And again, go till it stops, give about 5% more, and we're just gonna keep jumping around. Now, once they're all down and flush, now you can go around it and do just a little bit more, just a couple percentage. Just make sure they're all about the same. There's no reason to over tighten this. Don't forget, these are metal screws going into a plastic housing. So the threading on the plastic housing is plastic. These are metal. You can easily hurt something. But now I know for a fact everything is on there, it's flush and it's tight. And now we have these two pieces. And if you notice, we have a triangle on this side and nothing on this side. So which way does it go? Well, at this point, it really doesn't matter. As long as you remember in the instruction, the inlet would be this one. The one that has the triangle going into it. You see that? So if you want your inlet there instead, you could just remove this. It's just a couple of screws like I showed in the beginning, and just literally turn this around from here to here, and now your inlet will be on that side. Say you messed up your loop order and you don't have more tubing and you made this the in instead of the out and vice versa. You don't have to redo your bends or anything. Just take out those 4 screws and flip that around and you're good to go. And then you're gonna make sure that that sits flush. They're not gonna stick through and they're not gonna be too low. They're gonna sit flush. Turn it around and I'm gonna put back the 3 screws. And again, guys, this doesn't need to go tight. Just go till it stops, give it about 5% more. And that is our block put back together. Yay. Looks great, right, guys? So don't forget, the triangle direction, that is your in. This is your out. All right, what we're gonna do is put this away, get our pump rest combo over here, and do what we just did to our pump rest combo. Break it down, clean it out, put it back together. And don't forget also our radiator. We're gonna do our fittings and we're gonna probably do our tubing too, because all that stuff needs to be cleaned out.